Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to take a look at a couple of comics that have seen their values come down. And the big question is now the time to snag these books? I hope you enjoy. All right, so the first book that we're going to look at, I think, is a really awesome book. I actually had a copy of this at one point in time that I gave away as part of a giveaway, but we are going to look at Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, issue number 134, the first appearance of Darkseid in cameo. A little bit of a controversial book, if you will, because Darkseid is only seen on a little screen on a single page, I think also on a single panel. So a little bit of a controversial thing. But we first want to glance at the 9.2 for this book, and you'll notice that there are only 84 copies on the census. About 50 copies have traded hands. The book has an FMV, according to Go Collect, of $1,100. But the good news is that there has been a sale within the last 30 days. So I first want to glance at that one. And essentially what you'll see here, and you can see it play out quite nicely on the graph on the left-hand side, is that the value of this book is somewhat flat here. In November, the book was selling for $1,100. And if you back up a little bit to March, the book was essentially $1,100. Before that, it was $900 in September of 2021. So a couple of things to really point out here is that there are not a lot of copies of this book on the census, which might be why we are seeing the price of this book remain relatively stable. You can see 1 year ago, the average for this book was $1,100, 90 days, $1,100. And again, the 30-day is averaging around $1,100. And again, I think part of the reason for that is that there just are not a lot of copies of this book on the census. So if this is something that you want, what we may be looking at is what the book is going to go for. Again, only 84 on the census total. And as you go up in grade, you can see that the census count actually drops. I'm actually surprised that there are as many as 10 9.8s on the census. So you can see the FMB for that, but not a whole lot in the way of sales data for this book. I think there's a little bit more meaningful information that can be derived by looking at the 9.0, which has a higher census count and also a higher number of sales, but a lower fair market value. So let's go ahead and click on that and see what we see here. We're going to get rid of the present day value and look at the sold prices for this one. Let me blow that up just a little bit. So what we can see is in November, this book actually sold for $495. And if we back up, we can see that in September, the book sold for $642, which represents about a $150 decline from September to November of this year. So definitely a downward trend with this book. And if we zoom out just a little bit here, you can see that to some degree or another play out here on the numbers on the right hand side. You can see the 30-day average around $500, the 90-day was around $570, and the 1 year $687. So definitely not a high dollar book, but a book that has been impacted nevertheless by seeing its value actually come down. So again, just an interesting book to look at here. And I want to back up and we'll look at one other example. And I think that this one's a little contrarian to the overall trend that we are seeing. And I want to look at the 8.5. There are 166 copies of this one on the census with, again, a higher number of sales, a lower fair market value at just $500. But this one does have some 30-day data. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one and see what we see here. And as you can see very quickly and easily, the chart on the left looks very different. It looks a little bit different. So when we look at what the book sold for in November, the most recent price was $560, which is up from where it was in October of $439. And the question is, why is that happening? Why is that the case? Well, when you drill in and you actually look specifically at that most recent sale, what you will notice is that this copy of Jimmy Olsen issue number 134 had white pages. And so I am attributing this increase of $121 from October to November to the fact that the copy that sold has white pages. That's the only thing that I can come up with. I know that there are people out there that absolutely prize white pages. And if you look, creamed off white to white, the last sale of a book with actual white pages at an 8.5 was in January of 2022. So if you are a white page enthusiast, this is not necessarily a book that is all that common, especially again with the fact that it has white pages. So I wanted to kind of point that out, because I think if we back up a little bit, I think what we can probably see play out here is that downward trend. If you look at the 6.5, you can see 1 year dropping to 30, the 1 year for the 6.0 dropping to 30, the 5.0, right? So the 8.5 was the standout, where there was actually an increase in the recent months. And again, I think that is attributable to the fact that the book had white pages. So let me go ahead and close that out, and then we will look at an additional example here. One of the things that some folks have been asking me for is to look at less expensive books. So that's what I'm trying to do in this video. But I will point out here that whenever I highlight a book in this video series, oftentimes the trend, as I just demonstrated, holds true for many of the grades that are highlighting. So even if the book that I'm highlighting doesn't fit your spending parameters, if you look at other lower grades, the trend holds true, and oftentimes the logic does as well, as to why these books might be books that you want to pick up now. So right now we are looking at Venom, issue number 3. This is the first appearance of Null, and there are people out there that believe that all signs point to Null making an appearance in the MCU. I am not sold on that, but there are people out there that believe it. And so I want to go ahead and look at this book, because again, now could be the time to snag this book. So I'm specifically looking at the 9.8 because again, I think that that's where you potentially want to be for this book. A 9.8 is where I would be. I think it's actually hanging on the wall behind me at a 9.8. But we're going to look at this one. And the most recent sale for this book was $282 in November. And if we back up 1 month, the book was selling for $237, which is an increase of just $44. So this book's value has not necessarily gone down in the near term, but it is actually a less expensive book overall. And if you look on the right hand side here, you can see that 1 year ago, this book was averaging $315. The 90-day dropped it to $268, and the 30-day has seen it bounce up just a little bit to $276. Now, what you may also notice in the small print here is that the high watermark for this book was $690, which is a lot of money, especially when you consider that sale happened not that long ago. That sale happened right before Thanksgiving here, and I'm not quite sure why anyone would pay $700 for this book on eBay, especially when you can see everything around it is going for a lot less money than that. So that's definitely something that's interesting. So again, just one book that I wanted to point out here that, again, fits the criteria definitely of a less expensive book, but also a book that people are to some degree or another speculating on. Again, I don't necessarily know if Null is coming to the MCU, but there are people that absolutely believe it. So let's go ahead and take a look at one additional book, which it might be a source of speculation for a lot of people right now, considering that this is all about the Black Panther, and this is a cover appearance. I do believe the first cover appearance of Shuri as the Black Panther. This is a J. Scott Campbell cover, gorgeous cover. I do not own this book, but I wish that I did. I want to go ahead and look at the 9.8 again, because I believe that when you're talking about modern books, potentially the 9.8 is where you want to be. There are some people that find value, if you will, in going with the 9.6, because there is oftentimes a cliff as you go from the 9.8 to the 9.6. So there are folks that will go that route. But I want to go ahead and zoom in on this one. And the most recent sale for this book in November was $361. And if we back up to October, the book was selling for $460. We are looking at roughly a $100 decline from October to November. And if we back up a little bit, this book in September of 2021 was selling for $836 at a 9.8, which is a lot of money. There is no doubt about that one. On the right-hand side, you can see that 1 year average for this book is roughly shy of 500. the 90-day drops it to just above 400, and now we are sub 400 here in the 30-day. So again, a lot of excitement around the Black Panther movie right now. The movie has brought in a tremendous amount of money, and the first cover appearance of Shuri is going for below $400, where again, not that long ago, it was going for a lot more money. So I want to back up real quick and play out that 9.6, see how that looks. You can see the FMV from a 9.8 to a 9.6 drops off. The FMV, according to Go Collect, is $280 for this book. But let's see specifically what is happening with the value of this book. Back in October 21, this book was selling for $500. As of, let's see, October of this year, the book is selling for $173, and November, $136. So again, a massive cliff between the 9.8 and 9.6. And for a lot of people, represents a buying opportunity. If you think that you're going to buy that book and crack and press it and resubmit it and hopefully get a 9.6, you definitely want to take pay careful attention to the book before buying it, to make sure that that book has the potential to be CPR'd. Again, you just definitely want to pay attention to that if you happen to want to risk it. Again, 9.6 is not a bad grade, not a bad grade at all, and they are definitely less expensive than the 9.8. So I do want to look at one additional book here, and I could not resist. I could not resist the temptation of bigger keys. So I wanted to look at one bigger key here. It is a book that I really enjoy. This is the first appearance of Phoenix. And so X-Men issue number 101. So I want to look at a couple of things here with this book. We're going to start things off with the 9.6. Because there is no recent sales data for the 9.8. So we're going to look at the 9.6 for this book that was released in 1976. And we're going to drop that off. And what we see here is that the value of this book in November was sitting at $1,700 roughly. If we back up to the most recent sale after that one, you can see it happened in July, which is a big gap. But again, this is a 9.6 for a book that was released in 1976. So we see a value of $2,019 in July. And again, if you fast forward to November, $1,700, that is about a $318 decline from one period to the next. But if you back up to June, what you see is a more pronounced, a more precipitous drop in value. From June, this book was selling for $3,360. Fast forward to November, $1,700. That represents a $1,660 decline from basically the summer until the fall of the same year, which is a pretty dramatic fall off for this book. And again, not a bad price, not a terrible price to pay for this book. And I think, how many are on the census? Around 400? Yeah, 401 copies of this book on the census. Roughly half of those traded hands, 233 sales in recent time. So if we look at the 9.6, what does the 9.6 look like? Similar decline here. You can see September, which is the most recent sale, 1,200. If we back up, August 13. If we back up to May, 2,000. So a similar kind of trend line there. But there you have it. I wanted to show a couple of books that range in value and potential, if you will. Hopefully you all enjoyed this most recent installment of Snag These Books Now. If you did, I definitely want to encourage you to give the video a thumbs up. If you really enjoyed it, I encourage you to share this video with your local community. And if you need to reach out to me for any reason, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.